So we'll be moving on to another conversation, and this one is interesting because it's all about sports psychology. How does it work, and how is it all about that? So now, before we get into that conversation, let me just give you some news. Is that Kenya eventually is going to be hosting a match at home, and this is in the African World Cup qualifiers, and Nyayo National Stadium is going to be the host venue for that match. So if you're a Kenyan, the good news is that game is coming on the 24th of March, and that is a Monday. It's part of the World Cup qualifiers. Kenya against Gambia. Before that, we'll have played against Gabon. We'll have played against the Gambia before that. And remember, those matches will be live on KBC Channel 1. So let's move on to our next conversation, and this is all about sports psychology, and we have got Nancy Wangome. Well, Nancy, welcome.
Thank you.
And you know, when people see the role of psychologists in sport, the first thing is, okay, let me just request you to separate the psychiatrist and the psychologist. To most people, ni daktari wa kichwa.
Absolutely. So a psychiatrist has to do with somebody who works around individuals who are clinically unwell, who may have schizophrenic or things like that. But a sports psychology is a person who works around the use of thoughts, words, and actions to win a game. So psychology of the game is the intellect of the game. So that's the difference. So it does not mean that the team members are unwell mentally. It means that you're sharpening their wit to leverage in the game, in winning the game specifically. Yes.
Just give us a background of this area of psychology and how it came to be before, we look at the different aspects of it.
Absolutely. So for me, it was very organic. I played volleyball in high school, Buruburu Girls.
Actually, not about for you, but the field itself, sports psychology, the history of it.
Ah, okay. So the history of sports psychology is a development in the sports arena where some games are very intellectual. Specifically, I would speak about volleyball and basketball. Of course, chess is an intellectual game as well. So it's developed as a way of enhancing the game, raising the game. And so that's the background of sports psychology. And you find many coaches, as they're getting trained as coaches, there is a segment of sports psychology. However, as a team coach, for instance, in football, they're not necessarily able to take care of everything pertaining to sports psychology. So in the more developed countries, there is a sports psychologist for the team. Right, so that in the same way we have a nutritionist, a therapist in the team, is the same way sports psychology has a specific role in preparing the team for a game or a tournament or even for World Cup.
Well, we'll be coming to that and also be delving into some stories that have been told about how some players play the game of psychology wittingly or unwittingly, but eventually you get to hear and how they operate with that. Now, how else should we be taking a look at it? Think of the individual sport, team sport, and for those who work in the technical benches. So that's what we're going to be, having conversations about. The other thing that we'd like to bring out is how do you bring in this area of study into conservative cultures like ours? So, Nancy.
Yes.
So, let's talk about individual sports and how you handle it. I'm trying to think of tennis.
Yes.
Athletics would be another.
Yes.
Shooting would be another.
Yes.
Archery.
Yes.
Those individual sports.
Yes,
how do you approach
absolutely. That's easy. I mean, in that, it's about the individual learning the techniques of the game, but as well also having a goal. Psychology is about intention. And so when it comes to individual sports, I have worked with a chess player. She was a junior, and she went on to be the national champion. So it's about setting goals, learning to remain calm when the tension is high, and being able to leverage your personal giftings and advantages in the game. So I also did a session with tennis players. They were based in the UK. And so it's actually very easy because it's one element of the player, which is the mind, the mental aspect, the mental agility, but also envisioning that you win the game. It's playing the game before the actual game. Yes.
So how you get to work around them, such that number one, you're dealing with different characters.
Yes.
There may be those who are, how would I describe them? Let me just put it into two.
Yes.
There's the introvert
Yes.
and the extrovert.
And so it doesn't really matter, because when it comes to the game, there's specific goals. I divide sports psychology into two. First, it's self-discovery. So that if it's an individual sport, then it's very easy. We only focus on you understanding yourself, what are your strengths, and where you have weaknesses, particularly. The greatest challenge in sports is to handle the crunch, the tight moment, the final lap, and to have the preparedness to go through it successfully. And so whether they are introverts or extroverts, it's a nanny issue. The issue is, do they understand their character and how it fits into winning? Because sports psychology, for me personally, is about winning. It's about dominance. So understanding yourself, and then being able also to understand your opponent and leveraging their weaknesses for your own advantage.
So I'm going to come about that
Yes.
actually with a good example. I mean something I read. Let's now come to team sport.
Yes.
Because that's where it can get real crazy.
Yes, absolutely. Now, I was giving a little bit of history. I played volleyball, which is a team sport, and I'm 5'3", and you were just talking about the height of the net. But I realized, and this was by accident, my coach, Catello at the time, he was overheard speaking about my value in the team. That Nancy's value is psych. If she's in the game, then everybody's mind is towards winning the game. And so when I first engaged a team sport or team members in sports psychology, it was actually Gor Mahia, 2011. They were being beaten thoroughly towards the end of the year. And we were walking through Nyayo, and I said to my two friends, let's go talk to the treasurer. I want him to pay me to help the team win. And I simply told him that I'll help the team win. So when we sat with the team, first of all, is for the team to agree on, we're going into a game, what's the game plan? What is the outcome? So we talked about how many goals do you want to beat Thika United with? The strikers agreed, I'm going to score one, I'm going to score one. And that is precisely what happened the next day. So when the chairman was calling me the next day, when they had beat Thika United 3-0, as we had discussed in the boardroom, we had realized that to set a goal is a critical part of sports psychology, and that a lot of times players, athletes take it for chance. They don't plan around it. You ask the captain, there is no real actual projection of how they want the game to go. So when we did that, we realized the power of having the conversation in a boardroom and everybody understanding, I'm the defender, our game plan is no one passes us. We're not going to concede a goal. And then the strikers say we're going to strike 3 times. And that's how we engaged. Now, the interesting thing about that is, so we did that with Gor Mahia in 2011, and they went on to have a winning streak for a number of years. In 2013, the CEO, AFC Leopards, Gor Mahia had just beaten AFC Leopards the weekend before. And there was a GoTV Shield where they intended to win the game. So he called me and said, listen, we've been beaten in the league. We want to win the GoTV Shield. And said, game on, call me. We went to the boardroom, did a meeting, and we created a plan that ensured that AFC Leopards beat Gor Mahia that following weekend. So it's about engaging the mind, understanding what do you want to achieve. You even set the specific number of goals. And the more effective way to have sports psychologists bring impact is through the training. These people call me when it's tough. They call me when the game is really bad, not in the training sessions, not in the preseason. But that's really where the work is, to get these people to build their agility mentally. So it really worked for us each time.
Every team has got leadership.
Yes.
And that within the playing unit, there is what is known as the leadership in the dressing room.
Yes.
And then there's the technical bench.
Yes.
Let me get the story of, how you deal, especially with, once the story of Kobe, the late Kobe Bryant. He has a story where he would actually play mind games with his teammates in training. And they say that, it was said that he was a softie on the court, despite his performance, but not when they're training. How do you get, people to understand this, such that they understand in dealing with leaders, and you may see them being aggressive in training, but if you look at them on the court, it's a different human being,
Yes.
not like as aggressive.
Yes. So, I mean, that's tact, and that's an interesting story to hear. It's very, you see, when the game, there's already too much at stake. So if the leader brings pressure, he must only do so if he knows that his team members can handle it. Now, if he understands that these people are not very good with pressure, he can lay back and lead softly as a strategy to win, right? So sports psychology is really about the mind and to understand. And you're right. What I found in the different teams I engaged in is that there was need to develop the leadership even more, so that the captain is able to tell the team, this is our game plan. You know, because when the game is going on, the coach is outside the game. He's not on the pitch. So that leadership is critical. And yes, it requires an understanding of self, of teammates, and what they bring on the table, and the best strategy to handle an opponent. So it's a lot of dynamics.
Still another Kobe Bryant story.
Yes.
Very interesting. When Shaq joined the team, he had been told, this is your scoring. I think he did a series of games where he scored over 40. It was so long. When Shaq came back, he came down to mid-30s. How then do you help, and this was under the instruction from the coach, how do you help somebody understand that this is what's going on, such that, you know, this is the leader of the pack, don't always tend to outshine? How do you manage that?
That is a dynamic that has to be managed by the players themselves. It's very important for players to understand each other. So other than your strength, since it's a team sport, you have to understand what your teammates are bringing on the table. And sometimes that takes time. If you're bringing in a new player, it's very important to allow for that collaboration to develop, to sort of mushroom by itself. So that happens. Sometimes it affects the game, and that's normal. But then it's important for the coach and the technical team to be able to observe whether it's taking longer than needed, or there's something that needs to be done, or there's a separate conversation to be done off the court. So it really depends. It's a very dependable situation, and requires the involved parties to have understanding of self and of each other and what they bring to the team.
Now, to the technical bench.
Yes.
You have coaches
Yes.
who, on a touchline, they're known to be calm.
Yes.
But when they get into the dressing room,
Yes.
they're
Go
a
crazy.
very different animal.
Yes.
There are those who are known to be crazy on the touchline, in the dressing room, everywhere. You can tell by that.
Yes.
How do you work with the coaches? Because that's a whole, the way you deal with a coach is different.
Absolutely. And this is something that I thought on my way here, that other than thinking about sports psychology as beneficial to the players, this is something that as a country we need to focus on sharpening the coaches, because the psychology of the coach affects the game. I remember one time when we were playing volleyball and we had a very tough game, and the coach panicked, and his substitution was the dumbest move we have ever seen, and we were students. It was very dumb, but he was under tension. So it's also important to be deliberate to support the coaches.
So why would you say it was dumb? I mean, you mentioned
it was
it's volleyball.
just outright.
What was it? Was
If the
was
pressure,
it the setter? Was it the libero? Or was it?
He did a multiple, and that's even the worst part. It was a multiple substitution. And we realized it was a panic move, because he removed very critical people in the game when we really needed them to. And we actually lost that game. So, you know, it's even coaches need to learn to manage the pressure. And particularly if we want to dominate. Africans are very endowed physically, but I've seen us struggle when it comes to mental agility. And so it is important to develop the muscle even for coaches. So there is need for training. We did a training with coaches for volleyball, with the Volleyball Federation 2 years back. We had somebody coming from the Philippines. So even coaches need support. And this is very much out of topic, but we can talk about it another day. The diet is very important when you're handling pressure. So coaches need support to handle the pressure.
No, just mention, what are you not supposed to eat? It's very easy.
No. Players, coaches, forget soda. It's going to slow your brain. You're going to a match, don't do soda. If you have nuts, cashew nuts, peanuts, or if you have Miranda, you're going to be good. You're going to be able to handle the pressure. So that is something that I believe that is needed for us to raise the game across the board, football, basketball, rugby. It is needed for even coaches to be supported in handling the pressure, and even the individual games where the athletes need that at a global space.
I mean, at the risk of you repeating this.
Yes.
You mentioned about working against an opponent.
Yes.
I've had people say this is what we intend to do. Some can be crazy aggressive.
Yes.
Others can use, how would I say, things that baffle you, but you really don't know what's going on. How do you work around that?
I mean,
we see that in team sports a lot.
Yes, absolutely. So I'm very competitive, and I'm working on it because it can get ugly sometimes. But when it comes to those types of things, it is allowed. I mean, there's working within the ethics, right? You can attack your opponent's psyche by intimidating, particularly in volleyball when you come to the net. It's a wonderful opportunity to intimidate the opponent by what you say, your expression. And so it's just working within the limits, but also if you notice your opponent has a weakness. We had a player in Moy Girls who was huge. I mean, she wasn't agile, and we knew it. And so for me, it was very easy. Just dodge the ball. Don't even spike it. Just dodge it. She's not going to get it. And that is allowed. And we won a game because of that kind of understanding and leveraging of weakness. And it's allowed in the sports industry as long as it is ethical. So.
When you're studying your opponents, and studying the opponents, because that's another area I know that is developing. Everyone started with video analysis.
Yes.
Now they're looking at different, characteristics of players.
Absolutely. Yeah, and that's exactly. So that's where now it gets more. It can get dirty, but also it's still something you take advantage of. If somebody is easily pissed off, I remember we would even take advantage of a coach of a certain team who is easily tipped off, to make fun of the players and then get him off the game, and then we win the game easily. So it's just, that's the reality of the game. So you better be able to conceal your weaknesses while you study your opponent's weaknesses, because you are under study, you're being studied in the game, even before the game, so each team has to adapt.
Let's talk now about something. Talk about Kenya and psychology and how it comes, bringing it into sport. First, we know that for this to work, it's a trust level that first must be built.
Yes.
And let's look at our conservative culture, plus the perception of psychology.
Yes.
As they would say, you're trying to get information from me.
Yes.
So how do you deal with, how do you blend in this in a country like ours?
Education. This platform you've given me is excellent, so just begin there. And also there is a notion that, so we deal with it by sharing information. Everybody has a psyche, everybody has a mind. To learn to use it is of importance, whether you're a player or not. Even in life, even how men go about getting ladies or to work a box, it's psychology. So there's nothing, it's not about being unwell, it's about leveraging a gift we have from God. And so, like I said, I am very, very short in the volleyball game, but I had advantages. We played Tetu in Nyeri, and I would hear the coach saying, "Why are you letting this short girl beat you?" Because psyche, it wasn't strength. It's not all about strength. And so if we can combine our physical prowess and giftings with a trained mind, then we are going to have an easy time dominating Olympics, global championship. We have the under-20 football team going to the World Cup. This is an opportunity.
To the Africa Cup of Nations.
To the Africa Cup of Nations. So this is an opportunity. We know that they have a certain capacity physically. Can we sharpen their brains? And this is me chokozaing Salim to call me and tell me to do sports psychology for the team.
I'm sending you an invoice for bringing bringing your business and trying to pitch it right here on KBC Channel 1. Nancy, thank you very much for being with us. That's the story of sports psychology, and she has done a lot, and giving real life experiences and how it works in sport. Well, time for me to leave. Thank you for being with us right here on Sports Check as we had conversations about masters swimming, foot volley, and now psychology in sports. Our sign language interpreter has been Brian Moreau, and on behalf of the team that put this all together, we're saying asante sana for being with us.
Thanks.